All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely demystify a financial transformation that happens quietly, in the background, every single day. We're looking at exactly how the wealthy turn saving into investing, step by step, transforming just basic, everyday savings into massive compounding wealth. The best part? It's a totally replicable system. It's not a secret, and it's definitely not locked behind some exclusive paywall. By the end of our time together today, you are going to see exactly how this machine works.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to picture two people, Greg and Grace. They work at the very same company, they have the same job title, earn the exact same salary, and actually, they even live in the same apartment building. They both started putting money aside exactly 10 years ago. But the difference in their accounts today is just staggering. Greg has built up a very responsible $41,000 in savings. Grace, on the other hand, is sitting at just over $300,000. She didn't inherit a dime, she didn't get a secret raise, and she didn't gamble on some lottery ticket stock. This really highlights the mathematical tragedy of just leaving your money in cash. Grace simply did one thing differently on one specific afternoon, proving that saving isn't the finish line, it's just the on-ramp.
Here's a quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the cost of doing nothing, then walk through crossing the line, the order of operations, automating your money, and buying cheap funds. And finally, we'll look at the magic of compounding time.
Section 1. The cost of doing nothing. Let's start with a macroeconomic reality that, well, most people honestly just don't want to hear. Saving money purely on its own is actually a really slow way to get poor. Now, you're not going broke overnight, but you're getting quietly and politely poor 1 year at a time in a way you don't even feel until the damage is already done. Here is the brutal math behind that. A dollar you saved back in the year 2000 buys you only about 51 cents worth of actual stuff today. Half of its purchasing power just poof, evaporated. Nobody stole it, you didn't spend it. It's the invisible tax of inflation where prices climb every single year while your proud little dollar just sits there completely still. Cash is mathematically guaranteed to lose to inflation over time. I mean, even if a high-yield savings account is paying you 4%, if inflation is also running at 4%, you're really just furiously treading water.
Now, the wealthy, they figured this out a long time ago. Think about this startling data point for a second. The wealthiest 1% of households keep roughly 2% of their wealth in cash. Just 2%. For them, cash is absolutely not a destination. It's merely a waiting room. Contrast that with the bottom half of the country, whose biggest assets are their homes and their cars. And cars are depreciating vehicles that are worth less literally every single time you start the engine. The top 10% own 90% of all the stock in the country because they fundamentally understand that their money has to be out working, not waiting.
Section 2. Step 1. Crossing the line. So that brings us to the very first actionable step in the wealthy system. They have a completely different definition of what an emergency fund actually is, and doing this requires completely redefining the purpose of your savings. So, the crucial point is this. An emergency fund is not a savings goal you just mindlessly pile money into forever. No, it's a rigid border. It is 3 to 6 months of your expenses kept perfectly safe so that a broken transmission doesn't totally ruin your life. But everything up to that line is for safety, and everything past that line is strictly for growth. Remember Greg? He spent 10 years just camping on this line, treating his emergency fund as a never-ending savings goal. And that perfectly responsible habit of doing nothing on purpose, it cost him $260,000. What Grace did on that one specific afternoon 10 years ago was incredibly simple. Once she hit her 3 to 6 month cushion, she took about 20 minutes to set up an automatic transfer. From then on, every single dollar of overflow past her safety line was immediately deployed into investments. She didn't have to wake up and feel brave every single month. She just forced her money to get to work. As the saying goes, she turned her overflow into a river instead of a puddle.
Section 3. Step 2. Order of operations.
Now, once you cross that line, where you actually put the money matters immensely. Because the reality is, not all investing dollars are created equal. Some of those dollars are worth 50 to 100% more than the day you earn them before they even grow a single percent in the market. Here is that precise, highly lucrative sequence. First, grab your workplace match. If your company matches the first 5% you put into retirement, that is a 100% immediate return. Honestly, turning that down is exactly like leaving a physical paycheck sitting in the office fridge. Second, eliminate toxic debt. Paying off a credit card charging you 20% interest, that's a guaranteed return that absolutely no stock market can promise you. And third, utilize stealth accounts, specifically a health savings account, or HSA if you have the right health plan. Money goes in untaxed, grows untaxed, and comes out untaxed. It is a triple tax advantage that the wealthy basically use as a stealth retirement account, while most folks just use it to buy glasses.
Section 4. Step 3. Automate your money. Trying to keep that sequence straight every month sounds like a ton of work, right? Which is exactly why the wealthy completely remove willpower and panic from their financial equations. They automate. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of defaults. When companies make employees opt into a retirement plan, meaning they have to actively wake up and choose to save, only 64% actually participate. But when companies automatically enroll everyone and force them to opt out if they don't want it, participation skyrockets to 94%. It's the same exact people, the same paychecks. Consistent investing doesn't rely on some monk-like discipline. It relies on automated defaults, moving the money before your brain even gets a vote. Automation also does something even more crucial. It protects you from yourself. Studies continually show that average investors actually underperform the very funds they own. How is that even possible? Well, because human beings panic. They get scared when the market drops and sell at the absolute bottom, and then they get super excited and buy back in at the very top. Automation completely fixes this human emotion by ignoring the news and just buying calmly, right on schedule, every single month.
Section 5. Step 4. Buy cheap funds.
Okay, so your money crosses the line, follows the order, and moves automatically. But what is it actually buying? This is where people constantly paralyze themselves by overcomplicating things. Let's look at the devastating impact of fees for a second. Take a $10,000 investment over 30 years. If you put it in a low-cost index fund that just buys a slice of the 500 biggest companies in America, you keep your growth. But if you put it in a fancy managed fund charging just a 1% fee, that tiny, innocent-looking fee quietly devours $40,000 of your future wealth. The fee actually becomes way bigger than your original investment. Complex is definitely not always better.
There's this fantastic quote from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. Paying a premium for an expensive fund manager, who, by the way, usually fails to even beat the cheap index, is like hiring a personal chef who mostly just reheats worse versions of the exact same frozen meal you could have bought yourself. The wealthy buy the cheap index, and they keep the fee. Also, it's worth noting that when the ultra-rich need cash, they rarely sell these assets and pay taxes. Instead, they simply borrow against them, keeping that compounding machine running totally uninterrupted.
Section 6, the magic of compounding time.
And that brings us to the climax of this explainer. The very reason all these boring, automated steps actually matter. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this is the mathematical engine that turns a modest surplus into massive accelerating wealth. Compounding isn't addition, guys, it's acceleration. It is quite literally the world's slowest magic trick. Look at investing $500 a month at a 7% return. After 10 years, you have $86,000, which, yeah, it feels a bit slow. But keep going. At 20 years, it's $260,000. At 30 years, it's over $600,000. And by year 40, it's sitting north of $1.2 million. The final decade alone adds more wealth than the first 20 years combined, because eventually it's not your contributions doing the heavy lifting anymore. It's the growth on the growth.
Because compounding is so back-heavy like that, the most expensive mistake you can possibly make isn't picking the wrong fund, it's waiting. If you invest $500 a month starting at age 25, you end up with about $1.37 million at age 65. But if you wait just 10 years and start at 35, you end up with $740,000. Waiting those 10 years didn't just cost you 60 grand in missed deposits, it literally created a $700,000 graveyard of unborn future money. No way around that math.
Now we absolutely have to look at the impartial reality presented in the data here. The straightforward truth is you simply cannot invest a surplus you do not have. Systemic challenges are very, very real. Right now, 59% of Americans cannot cover a surprise $1,000 expense from savings. So pretending this is all just about skipping your morning latte is simply inaccurate. However, the system we just walked through, the line, the order, the automation, the cheap funds, is just information. For anyone out there who does have a surplus, whether that's $25 or $500 a month, knowing this system is easily worth 6 figures over a lifetime.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to evaluate in your own life. Look at the money you already have right now. Is it actively working for you? Or is it just sitting in a puddle at the edge of the line, waiting for permission you are always allowed to give? The choice to cross that line is yours today. Everything else, it's really just steps. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this empowers you to put your money to work.